Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's In Conversation With event, part of the University's Black History Month celebrations. My name is Nicholas Edwards, and I'm the Deputy Director of People here at the University, and it's my pleasure to host tonight's event with our guest, Jamala Osman. Tonight's event is going to start with a talk from Jamala, followed by some conversation with me, and then crucially, some time for questions from our audience. If you do have any questions that you want me to pose to Jamala, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to type your question, and I'll do my very best to answer or ask as many of those as I can. For now, that's more than enough from me. It's hard to introduce our guest tonight without really resorting to any apparent cliches or revealing too much about her inspiring story. Jamala's story starts pretty difficultly, but thankfully she was able to make a truly remarkable change in her life, which saw her assuming a leadership role in the financial sector before dedicating her life to helping others and inspiring change on a large scale. It's worth reminding yourself when Jamala is speaking that she is only 26 years old. Without any further ado, here is Jamala Osman.
Hi guys, thank you very much for having me. Thank you for the introduction. It's nice to be here. It's nice to be celebrating Black History Month with all of you guys. Thank you guys who joined the talk. So as you said, I'm going to kind of tell you my story and speak a little bit. And it's kind of weird not being there with you guys. And I'm only just getting used to delivering talks in this way. And I still kind of get nervous, even though I can't see anyone. I can just see myself, but I do still kind of get nervous. So just to kind of get the energy levels right for myself, mainly and for you guys, we'll do a bit of spoken word just to kind of set the tone for today's talk. This is something that I wrote before lockdown, or just before lockdown as it was getting into it, and it kind of resonates with me more and more every single day. So it's called The World's Still Turning. So the world's still turning. In a life where we're constantly seeking for certainty, in a world that we've always known to be uncertain. And as we're getting older, we feel weakened as every day is a constant pursuit to strengthen our purpose. See, every other thought is this worth it? Knowing that you will always feel worthless if you never truly understand what your worth is. But the world's still turning. And so we post versions of ourselves online and let others decide what our worth is as if we were being purchased. And they say history repeats itself. So I guess this is just another reoccurrence. Followers are not service. Forget the character, but the 200 characters they've chosen, the world's still turning. And even though it seems like I've been busy working, you're seeing updates of me burning a candle at every angle in a city that's always burning. That's why they call it the big smoke. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I feel like a big joke because I've been up all night hurting, past pain and trauma lurking, suicidal thoughts emerging. See, I'm chasing sleep just so I can live in my dreams, but I don't feel deserving because this world is still turning. And I feel trapped in this web and I can't navigate or surf through this net. Even I know Google will never give me the answers to what I'm searching, like how to lighten this burden. But this past year has been an accumulation of past lessons. And only now I'm understanding why I learned them. Thank you very much, guys. So I kind of love to do that or kind of tell stories in that way because it's just what comes naturally to me. It's just what's easy for me because believe it or not, there was a time where I could never imagine myself having the confidence to even do something like this, let alone have the life that I've had. So I'm just going to kind of tell you my story. My journey is still continuing and hopefully you take something out of it. So I'll just start off with so I'm 26 years old, I'm from East London. So if I start my story from 10 years ago is kind of where things kind of started for me. So when I was 16 years old, I was not this cheeky, I was a cheeky, mischievous teenager. I just had no sense of direction. So at 14, I lost my mum and I was kicked out of my father's house. So I was a teenager that grew up in a council estate and just kind of led a life, just a normal life, or what I thought was a normal life. And then to have this trauma happen to me, and not only that, have no sense of direction, was kind of hard for me to have a future. So at 16, I found myself in a place where my mental health was not at its best. But I just thought, let me just do things I enjoy at this point. Let me just get somewhere. And fast forward 5 years, I got somewhere. So 5 years later, from 16 to 21, I ended up becoming one of the youngest bank managers in the whole country. So a lot can change in 5 years, and I don't want to. And what I'm gonna do is not gonna tell you that it happened overnight. What I want to kind of talk to you guys about is my journey. So I'll take you back to October 2014. It was a Monday. It was just a week after my 21st birthday, and I'd opened the doors to this Hatton Garden branch, and a customer asked me that morning, "Can I speak to the manager, please?" And I say, "Of course you can." So I go to the manager's office. I knock on the door. I open the door, but I can't see anyone in there. I can just see my coat, my bag, and it's in that moment that I realized, like, I'm the manager. And in that moment, I kind of took myself back to that 16-year-old self that I was, having gone through all of that. And I remember receiving a card that year on my 16th birthday that said, "Happy Sweet 16." Like, and I couldn't comprehend like all the milestones that were coming, because that was just the first milestone of many to come, like 18 and 21. And I couldn't necessarily see myself at 18 and 21. Because like I said, at 14, I'd lost my mum and I was kicked out of my father's house. My life had changed so dramatically. And at that point, I felt like I was spiraling out of control. And this is the thing that I like to take from my story is everybody around me at that time was saying I was spiraling out of control because I was bunking classes, I wasn't paying attention in school, I was getting in a lot of trouble, I was getting in a lot of fights, and a lot of things were happening. A lot of people around me were saying, "Jam, like you're spiraling out of control." And I look at that period in my life so differently, and I like to look at it into like spiraling into control. And this feeling resonates with me now at 26 as well. That same, like seeing the world be in such chaos and everything seems like it's spiraling out of control. But in a sense, me, the way I look back at that period was that I was spiraling into control. And the reason why I say that was because back then, I was waking up with the freedom to do what I wanted every single day. So that's a teenage dream. Like you're 14, 15, and you ain't got your mom and dad waking you up in the morning, telling you to go to school, like checking your report cards, checking your homework, and making sure you're back home at a certain time. Like I had the freedom to do what I wanted every single day. But I was so trapped in a cycle of pain, uncertainty, and fear. Like I couldn't see a life past where I was at. And people around me kind of accepted our fate too. Like my friends became a family at that point, and where I was spending so much time outside of the home, all we was doing was making trouble that we shouldn't have been making, and entertaining meaningless debates and trying to come up with plots to get out of our situations and stuff like that. But none of us necessarily believed that we could do it in the right way, if that made sense. But here's me around that age, a teenager on the block, looking at Canary Wharf. I live in East London. I live on a high rise. But the high rise opposite me outside my window is Canary Wharf. And I'm seeing the banking industry or the finance industry for the whole world, basically one of the biggest for the whole world. And I quickly dismissed that thought because I did have that thought at that age. And I accepted my fate too, like everybody else. And I was like, do you know what? I can't control this, but let me focus on what I can control. And this is why I like to call it spiraling into control, if that makes sense. Because when I got to a point where I was so low and I felt like I lost hope, for me, it didn't happen overnight. For me, I just felt like let me do things that I enjoy, and let me do things that people that I look up to do as well. And this is where I got into a weird fascination with reading a lot of autobiographies and just reading stories about people that have managed to turn their life around. And I was nowhere near that. But what that did is it gave me a sense of purpose. It gave me a sense of meaning. It gave me a sense of future hope. So those milestones came. This is why I like to call it spiraling into control, because those milestones came. And at 18, I managed to get myself a scholarship at Barclays. So they paid for my degree in leadership and management. It was a very, very competitive program. I remember my teachers telling me to do UCAS and go to university and do it the traditional way. But because of me and my circumstances, that was not something that I could do. At 18, I started living with my twin sister, and my younger brother was coming to see us and stuff like that. So I didn't want, like, after being kicked out from home and reconnecting with my family, the last thing I wanted to do was move out. So for me, I was more keen on getting a job. So that's why I decided to take that route. But it was the best thing that happened to me, was getting on that scholarship. And I started there in 2012. I did 3 years with them. And for me, this was an opportunity of a lifetime. I was very different to the people in my cohort. I didn't necessarily have the academic accolades that they had, but those interviewers saw something in me, which to this day I'm still trying to like comprehend, but they saw something in me that showed them that I was capable and that I'd work hard and I'd make the most of the opportunity, which is exactly what I did. So I started in 2012, and by the time I was in my second year, I was an assistant manager at that very Canary Wharf branch. So Barclays Canary Wharf has a branch right below on the first floor of his head office. And I ended up becoming the assistant manager there. So this is the block that I used to stare at, have those wild thoughts, or what I thought were wild thoughts, that I'm now 19 working at, 19 turning 20 working at. 9 months after that, get a call from my area director, and he has an opportunity for me, which is Hatton Garden branch, which is another central London branch. And Hatton Garden is known for being the diamond district of London. So obviously high clientele, high cash flow, high responsibility. It's the regional office for London. So everybody that's running the operations of London, whether that be mortgages, retail, credit cards, they were all based in that branch or above that branch around the offices there. So in terms of me not believing 5 years before that and having these wild thoughts to now being one of the youngest bank managers, still in my final year of university. So I still had my dissertation and my final year to do of university, and I'm working full time. I've been given all of this responsibility. But for me, the most important thing was, and what I feel made me successful in that, was that I understood not only what that opportunity could do for me, but what not messing up that opportunity could do for so many other people. So if I got this right, what that could do for so many other young people. And I feel like that's what gave me drive. That's what made me do those crazy 12-hour days and all-nighters writing essays and just putting everything I had into this opportunity. And through that, I was able to build a brand within the organization, because now they're seeing a young person that's not only delivering on, not as like a gimmick or token, like actual running a business credibly and having great customer service. It kind of put my brand up there. So in terms of the opportunities for when I finished university, they were endless. I did a stint in mortgages. So I became a mortgage advisor and then became managers of mortgage advisors, and then came back to retail and ended up managing higher branches. And I feel like at that point, I was not only had my brand accelerated within the organization, I was speaking to a lot of young people. And what scared me the most and what kind of didn't sit right with me was the fact that they were so shocked. And at first, that feeling of, yeah, like I'm 21, I'm a bank manager, I'm 22, I'm a mortgage advisor. The fact that they couldn't see that within themselves kind of did not sit right with me, even though I've been given this opportunity and I'm grateful for it. It's like, you can do it too. At that time, I didn't see anything special. I still don't see anything special. Like, I had to do the same amount of work, like, and studying that everybody else had to do. I just, made the most of that opportunity. So after going to like loads of schools and speaking to young people, and within the brand of the company and the organization, going to loads of HR meetings with them and speaking at AGMs and mixing with other organizations, and all of them saying, well, how do we find more young people like you? I just felt there was a massive disconnect, and I'm stuck right in the middle of it. And at that point in 2018, I had a choice whether to continue my career. At that time, I had career goals to be, you know, the youngest director and just, you know, continue from there. Or to figure out what's going wrong with this. Why is there such a disconnect from young people who have lack of aspiration? Not even aspiration because they don't even see themselves there, lack of aspiration, and organizations that want talent from these backgrounds. So I decided to leave my job and take a bold risk and leave my job and work with organizations. So I took some contracts with some organizations. I took contracts with the Department for Education as well, and did some work consulting and just helping bridge the gap. So essentially what we did was create programs, and through that, what I found as well, what kind of helped me was building resilience. So along that, I was working with HR departments as well to help them build programs to support the well-being of their employees and their young talent. Because there was a lot that I went through that I had to figure out myself. And there's a lot that a lot of young people go through that they have to kind of figure out themselves on the job. So there was a massive gap in terms of helping these young people build the resilience. For me, I had that building of resilience through losing my mum and being kicked out of my father's house and all of that. So I was lucky to kind of have, it's weird to say, but lucky in a sense to kind of have that and go through that experience. So, you know, if a customer's screaming in my face, that's a piece of cake. Like, I was homeless for a year, if that makes sense. So helping companies kind of build that, and just found a wealth of opportunities in doing that. And then last year decided to take my speaking career a lot more seriously, and just traveled around the world majority of last year speaking and working with young people, mainly with like UN organizations, and just helping young people build aspirations. So I've worked on a lot of projects. I even set up a Million Minds tour last year, which we did the UK's largest mental health awareness tour. We attempted a world record to break the world record for the world's largest mental health lesson, which we actually broke in 2017 the first time. We tried to break it last year with 3,000 people at the NEC in Birmingham, which we actually did. And yeah, like I'm right now, like it got to a point where I was just having so much fun and just kind of found purpose in helping young people find aspirations and using my story to do that, and making music and just other things to resonate with people to kind of support that. So that's my story. Obviously now we're in 2020, things have kind of changed a lot, but I'm enjoying speaking, I'm enjoying being offline, I'm enjoying plugging in and just kind of getting into the grassroots of things as well. So if there's one quote that I'll leave you with today, and it's a quote that I always say, is if your circumstances have the power to depress you, they also have the power to progress you. So if your circumstances have the power to depress you, they also have the power to progress you. Thank you very much, guys. I think we're going to go into it in conversation. So hopefully you can get a bit more out of it. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you for having me.
Jamala, thank you so much for that. Before this event started, I did ask, you know, what happens when Jamala stops speaking? Because I assume normally there would be applause and there would be people cheering, and I'm sure there will be people doing that just now, but it does seem very different in this virtual environment. I'll just quickly remind everyone that you can ask a question to Jamala. Just use the Q&A button just down at the bottom. But I suppose on that point, Jamala, you just said there, you know, last year you were speaking in front of 3,000 people at the NEC, and now you're staring into your phone in your room. How has COVID changed what you do and how you're currently able to drive that change?
Obviously the internet's a powerful thing. So we're using the internet and using this medium to connect with people is working to a sense, but it's not filling my soul the way it used to. Because for me, it was more of the feeling that I got and the energy that I got. So it's picking up, because if we look back in March, I purposely, consciously this year didn't take any contracts. I didn't take on heavy pieces of work because I wanted to just do my speaking, do a bit of traveling, finish writing my book. I was very, very comfortable. I had bookings all the way up until November, all over the world. had like a management team and everything. So to go from that to all of a sudden just things getting cancelled one after another, and then end of March, I'm kind of sitting in my room like, what's going on? What am I meant to do next? I have no idea. Was just a very first, like, I don't know, I think it just felt weird. It felt like I was on a summer holiday. Like, it took me back to school times, and it's just, I'm doing nothing. And it started to get real because I realized what I was doing. And then I went through a weird like breakup kind of phase. So I don't know if anybody's been in a serious relationship. When you break up with someone, like, that's what it felt like. I felt like I had a massive heartbreak because I couldn't do what I loved anymore. And then I did a couple of Zooms, and it kind of, it's like when you're really hungry and then you can only have a bite of something, or you can only have like a taster of it, but you want the whole meal, and it just wasn't kind of satisfying it for me. And it wasn't, it wasn't satisfying it for me as well. So for me, I just had to kind of find a way back, and thank God schools have opened again. So at the end of summer, I managed to get a job in a school. So I was working with young people on a one-to-one level. Now I'm at secondary school as well. So on like a higher scale, doing a similar sort of thing, like behavior and inclusion, supporting senior members of staff with young people as well. So that's where I'm getting my fuel from, if that makes sense, from the day-to-day job sort of thing. And I've managed to kind of thankfully find a way. And of course, it's nowhere near being a bank manager. I've got mortgage qualifications. I could easily, get my license from the FCA, and people are still buying houses in this market, or selling houses in this market, or rejuggling their finances in this market. But for me, that's not going to fill my soul, and I had to take a long think about it. And for me, I took that risk leaving my job in the first place. I went through that phase of where I was, not earning as much money and stuff like that. So it wasn't about that for me. For me, what keeps me sustained and what's kept me out of depression for so many years, over 10 years, is just having a purpose and fulfilling that purpose. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on stage. I do it every single day. Like I did it today with the girls that I mentor at school on a one-to-one level. And that's not on stage, that's not on Instagram, that's not getting likes or anything, but it's filling my soul. Like I'm connecting with people and inspiring people on, it's working in a sense.
Yeah. And I suppose one of the things that your story shows and you talk about, and the phrase that seemed to resonate quite a lot on the chat, was spiraling into control. And obviously at the moment, a lot of people feel that they have no control in the current circumstances. Do you have any advice for our viewers who might be young, might be students, about a sense of control in the current circumstances?
Yeah, I do. And this is something that's kind of helped me through this lockdown. I started reading a lot more, and the internet is a very wild and free place. So you find information. And for me, I always get fascinated about all the stuff that I didn't learn in school, all the stuff that we didn't necessarily deep dive into. And there's just the concept of, science is only proven if there's an experiment, but if that experiment hasn't been done yet, so nobody's ever conceived that, theory, then anything is possible. So I kind of went into that rabbit hole. I started reading a lot of work from Dr. Bruce Lipton on epigenetics. And this is the concept that kind of got me, through lockdown. And it's not even, I'm going to try and break it down in a non-scientific way. So epigenetics is basically the study that everything that happens to you, like in this life, like it's not, a lot of people carry this feeling that everything is inherited and, things are going to happen the way it's going to happen because that's ingrained in your DNA. But what he kind of talks about and what he proves and what's been proven today in a lot of stem cell research is that it's the environment that controls how the cells act and behave and stuff like that. And I say that to say this. So this is how I kind of imagine this lockdown. So imagine that we're cells in a caterpillar. So we all heard the caterpillar story, we've all gone through it. I was working in an infant school in the summer and they're all drawing their caterpillars and we're doing an experiment. Like we've got this caterpillar, we're catching it and we're going to see what's going to happen to this caterpillar. But we don't necessarily know what's happening to them cells inside the caterpillar. And cells, if we look at them, they're very much like people, like they interact like people, they multiply, stuff like that. So imagine the cells in a caterpillar, there's, I don't know, trillions of them, but imagine they're the 8 billion people on this planet. And the cells in the caterpillar, they're working hard, the world's going as it's going, they have a purpose. The caterpillar's getting stronger, it's eating nutrients, the digestive cells are digesting it, the sleeping cells are making sure it's getting sleep, this caterpillar's growing, it's growing, everybody's doing a great job, everybody's coming back from work that day like, yep, we did this caterpillar's looking strong, we're getting somewhere. And then all of a sudden, the outside environments, coronavirus happens, and we go into lockdown, cocoon. This caterpillar is now a cocoon because of the outside. Nobody saw it coming. None of these cells saw it coming, but it happened. And now we're in this cocoon. And this is what I look at this lockdown period like, because what happens in them cells scientifically is that they become redundant. A lot of us in this day and age, I've become redundant of a lot of jobs that I'm doing. A lot of people are actually physically becoming redundant and they have no sense of purpose. They have like, what are they going to do in the cocoon? Like they don't know what to do in this cocoon, the same way we don't know what to kind of do in this lockdown. But two things distinctly happen with these cells, or they do one of two things. They either commit apoptosis, which is they commit suicide, or there's another group of cells called imaginal cells. And these are the cells that slowly begin to find a different way of working. So they work in a different way, but not only do they work in a different way, they work together in a different way. Mm. And these are the cells that create the butterfly. So this is what's happening in today's world. Like right now, what I'm seeing in this cocoon or this lockdown is a lot of people are writing themselves off, or, you know, they're not seeing beyond this lockdown. They just want to go back to the caterpillar, but you're not going back to that caterpillar. You're not going to have legs anymore. Like everything's going to change. And because they can't conceive that, they're writing themselves off to the extent where it's sad to see a lot of people are taking their lives. And this is what's happening with these cells inside the caterpillar. But then on the flip side, there's a lot of cells called imaginal cells, and these cells are the ones that are creating, or what come to create the butterfly, and what have the vision to create the butterfly. And this is a question, when I came across this information and I made this link, this is the question I asked myself. And I do feel like, you know, writing myself off, and I can't lie, like I do want to go back to how things were, but accepting that things are not going to go back to how they were, and making the choice of whether I'm going to write myself off or become an imaginal cell to form this new world that seem to know what it is. Like we can't conceive it right now, seem to know what it is after lockdown. But that's the best like analogy that I can think of, and the closest thing that I can think of to what we're going through right now as a civilization, because every single person in this planet is affected. All 8 billion of us are affected. It's like when it's unconceivable how crazy it is that this time last year things were the way they are, and now, you know, you can't even go to the pub after 10 o'clock. Like it's weird. So the world's going to be a very, very different place. The advice that I'll give anybody off the back of that story is, are you going to be an imaginal cell, basically?
I really like that. I definitely haven't thought of it in that way before. And I suppose one of the things that brings up for me is, and you said there about depression and mental health and the kind of toll that not just coronavirus, but generally that you've experienced in the past. And one of the things that certainly at the university we encourage is people seeking help and actually asking for help at the right time. And I don't know whether you had any thoughts around taking those steps. I've heard you speak before in some of your videos online about using therapy and things that have worked for you, but do you have any thoughts on specifically reaching out for support when you need it?
100%. Now more than ever, because I feel like now everybody feels like, if you're anything like me, everybody's going through their own stuff. So let me not pipe up now and say something, but it's now more than ever. And even like I do my therapy sessions through Zoom now, and I feel like I go to the gym a lot, and physical health is important, but I go to the gym to build muscle. And if you think about your mental health in that aspect, you're going to need outside apparatus, i.e. another human being to kind of bounce off to build your mental, if that makes sense. It's very difficult to do that by yourself. And I've met people who have managed to do that by themselves, but they still found outside influences. And when I did that as a young person, I was getting that from reading books and reading biographies, and that kind of became my therapy. But nothing really helped me as much as speaking about it and writing about it and reaching out for help. I feel like the best advice that I could give someone is, don't think that, you know, your problem is too small, too like unimportant. Like, you're significant, your issues are significant, and there's people that care, that will listen. And even me, like, I've lost one of my, like, I'm getting emotional now thinking about it, because even me, like somebody who's gone through therapy, who does this as a living, even lost close friends like to suicide like recently because of this pandemic. So I just wish that they knew that they could speak to other people, and, you know, even though everybody else is going through it, they'll, you know, be there for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the messages that we would always encourage, certainly all of our students and staff and anyone in the community is reaching out. And there's a whole host of services, even just in Aberdeen at the university, available for those that need it. One of the questions 100%. That's actually come through from Rob links to this, because you talked there about reaching out to someone, and he's asked he's asked about the importance of mentors in your life, and it sounds as if various people saw potential in you and encouraged you. And what did they have a role in that?
100%. I feel like I had a lot of unofficial mentors in my, like, football coaches and stuff like that. But those are people who just necessarily just saw, would not just necessarily just speaking about like football and stuff like that. They took an interest in other things that were happening in my life. But it's so important. And I think when my development started to accelerate is when I was consciously looking for mentors and making decisions, especially when I was started my career at Barclays. I feel like that's the most important thing for me, because as a young person coming into organization, none of my uncles or aunties, none of my brothers and sisters had corporate jobs. Like, I can't come home and ask them about it. And I had a lot of what would be seen as silly questions, or I kind of maybe thought were silly questions that I wouldn't necessarily ask my colleagues or my boss. And I was very, you know, insecure about that. So finding a mentor was very, very important for me. And asking someone very senior, like a lot of my mentors were like maybe two grades above me, if that makes sense. Or just like 2 levels of like where I wanted to be. And I kind of just kept that rule of like, 2 levels of my next step, if that makes sense. So I'm finding mentors of spaces I wanted to be, or who kind of inspired me. But one thing that I was with my mentors was I was totally myself. I was totally different at work, but I was totally myself around them. And I feel like that was important. And them embracing that was important, because I did try to foster some relationships with other people, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's like finding a girlfriend. It's like, you're not just going to go there, or boyfriend, you're not just going to go there and just, you know, find anyone just because they're there you're going to look for somebody that's right for you. And I feel like that's important. I feel like when you treat a mentor relationship like that, it lasts. And those guys have still helped me to this day. Some of them still don't work at the bank. Some of them, you know, have their own businesses, and I've done contracts for them. Some of them now work for the government, and I've, you know, managed to get support from them and stuff like that. So even if it's just one of them calling me just to see how I'm doing, and just to kind of support me in you know, bouncing ideas of next steps and where I should go next, is very, very, very important. And I feel like you never know when you're going to need them, but at the same time, don't underestimate the value that you give your mentors as well, because it's a 2-way relationship, and you kind of get to a place. It's a 2-way relationship, and there's a lot of growth, there's a lot of beauty that comes out of it, and looking at it in relationship terms, and not just a formal mentor and, you know, filling out paperwork and all of that. Like, it was never structured. It was more of, we're 2 individuals and we're going to make this work for us. Might not work for this person and that person, but whatever works for us, and just reciprocating that. But it's very, very important, and I definitely encourage people to do that in whatever they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't agree more with that. I have benefited from having mentors at the university myself, and I wouldn't be sat here just now if it wasn't for them. And I think you're so right, that relationship is so important. And I think being able to be yourself as well, it's very different having a chat with your boss or asking those stupid questions to them than someone that you can ask without fear of it coming back to you as well.
Yeah, 100%.
One of the things that you talked about is social media, and it's always something that comes up for us at the university, in good and bad ways, and that kind of search for likes and search for validation.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for young people or young students at university using social media and the kind of good things and the bad things that they can fall into?
That's a tough one, because I feel like even like not even as a young person, everybody struggles with it on social media. But I think the thing that kind of keeps me sane is knowing that I'm using it and that it's not using me. So I don't feel any way of, I've been off social media for about 2-3 months now, just because, not totally off social media, but not as active on social media, purely because even for me, I got to a stage where I have a huge following, I get a certain amount of engagement and stuff like that. And it just became a sense where I felt myself looking at the numbers and not posting, not wanting to post authentic content, if that makes sense, and planning content. And that's never been me. Like, I just post whatever I want to post, if that makes sense. If it resonates with people, it resonates with people. But I feel like letting it use you would be your downfall. Is, I say, definitely just, try and put restrictions in terms of practical advice, put restrictions on it. Screen time is the best thing that iPhone ever created, in terms of limiting the amount of time you're spending on it. And I feel like if you're filling your time with other things, there's no way you're gonna have time to be on social media. When I was at my busiest, it was like, I know I post this, I know I need to do this, but I physically did not have the time. So I would have 2 other people on my account replying to messages and stuff like that. So when you fill your time with other things, that's not going to happen. I feel like in this lockdown, it's just easy to kind of pick up the phone, but let's not pick up the phones. Let's kind of go outside. Let's go for a run or do something different or interact. But I guess it's hard with social distancing and not being able to socialize, and you're socializing through, social media apps and stuff like that. But definitely limiting the time and seeing the blessing of using that time given back to you, even though you're not socializing. It's like, let me be a bit antisocial and socialize with myself. I feel like you can get to know yourself a lot more. And I feel like one thing that I went through personally, I feel like the last couple of years of my speaking career and started doing music, I went from having a couple hundred followers to gaining a lot of traction and having a few stints of like with videos going viral on other pages and stuff like that, getting literally thousands of notifications. And I found myself feeling a bit down, like not feeling right that was happening. And it's because I was taking it all in. And when you're taking it all in, it's very, very overwhelming. And you're seeing bad comments and you're seeing, good comments and stuff like that. And the good comments is like giving you the dopamine hit. So you're constantly seeking it and stuff like it. It became it becomes addictive, if that makes sense. But the thing and the best piece of advice that I got from one of my mentors was that don't take in the good and don't take in the bad. So if you're not getting happy over the likes and gassed over all the likes and the engagement that you're getting, and you're not looking at the bad and you're not letting the bad get down to you, and it's just is what it is, then you're more likely to keep more of a sane mind. But social media is dangerous, and too much of it's not dangerous, it's good and it's bad. But it's like anything, too much of it is not going to be great for you. So balance is key, especially in this time. Having discipline is key.
I love that concept of not letting it use you and you're using it. I haven't really thought of that before. And I also like the phrase you use, socializing with yourself, because I suppose a lot of us have probably had more of that over lockdown, but actually seeing that as a positive is actually a really nice thing to do as well.
100%, because now we have the time to like have a long bath with candles and stuff to ourselves. So it's actually really, really nice. And a lot of us used to go out drinking every week, and now get get stuff like that. So it was of it. And I feel like that's imaginal self-behavior. And I feel like that's one concept that that story is something that I definitely want to write down. I feel like there's principles that can be taken, or this new way of, not new way of thinking, but this survival guide or way of thinking, of being like an imaginal cell of, you know, these are the things, seeing the positives of, because these are how these cells are thinking. And I feel like if enough of us are thinking that way, we will create the butterfly, we will create the world after this lockdown.
I'm going to stop being selfish just now, and I'm going to turn to a couple more questions that have come in from people who are watching. So Janine is asking, well, firstly saying thank you very much for your talk, but what is the key way to support young people in an organisation to ensure they can reach their potential? Really easy question there.
I feel like working with anyone, it doesn't even have to be a young person. It's just, if you want to support that person, you need to know that person. And for you to know that person, there's a reason for you to know that person. You need to know them so you can create the environment for them to thrive in. So not everybody's going to thrive in that correct environment. If that makes sense. Some people do good with cold, some people do good with hot, if we're like talking about weather. But in terms of like creating an environment to support them. So as a manager, for me, when I was a line manager, it was important for me to know my staff individually and get to know them, not on like a deep personal level, but actually take time and invest in getting to know what this person likes, what this person's good at, what their strengths and weaknesses are, but also making sure that they know that as well. And then also and then from that, create the environment for them to thrive. And it's not, oh, I'm going to create this environment. Again, it's a two-way thing. Is this working for you? And then constantly checking and reviewing. I feel like that's what region, if I look back at what got the most out of me with this, and therefore knew how to create the environment for me to thrive in, or put me in situations and scenarios for me to thrive in, because what that does is it builds confidence. So rather than focusing on the negatives or the developmental areas of that individual, first start off by building confidence. And then when we build confidence and self-esteem, we work from there and create different scenarios and different environments.
Thank you very much for that. Ruth asked a question here. I think when you were speaking earlier, you said that you're different at work, but yourself when you're in your mentoring relationship. So when you're speaking to your manager, for example, do you want to take more of yourself to work, or do you feel better that you get to be someone slightly different in your different sort of environments, kind of work Jamala versus personal Jamala?
By that I meant as in I was less informal with my mentor, as in, and more time even more informal settings, like going for a drink or going for dinner. So of course when I'm at work, especially if I'm a line manager, the way I'm interacting with myself. But I feel like what made me, I'd be lying to you if I sat here today and said, oh, I felt 100% comfortable bringing my whole self to work at that time. I still don't know if I'd have this kind of haircut at that time. I still don't know if I was brave enough to do that, or if that would have been seen as unprofessional. It's like, you know. But I feel like what made me more successful was being less self-conscious, because I got into a phase of when I first started my career was completely being different. From the minute I left my house and got on that train and got into central London, by the time I was in central London, I was like all of the rest of the people in central London with suits. So I just kind of morphed into this kind of different person and tried to speak like everybody else, and I was getting nowhere. I was on performance improvement plans. I couldn't even work out what I was doing wrong because I wasn't connecting with people, because I wasn't myself. The minute I got transferred to another branch, I was literally that bad. The minute I got transferred to another branch and connected with that manager, started to be myself a bit more, that's when things started to connect. And to this day, a lot of things that I say to a lot of corporates and a lot of the programs that we run are more geared towards helping the corporate environment, helping the corporate companies create that environment where the individual can bring themselves to work, because essentially what that's going to do is create a high performing individual. And that's the goal of the organization, obviously the goal of the individual. So to answer the question, I do wish I could have bring more of myself to work, but I feel like towards the end of my career and the most successful parts of my career,
So I think we just lost you for a second there, Jamala, but I think you're back now.
I don't know what happened.
You are back.
Sorry.
Well,
but to answer to answer the question, I do wish I could have brought more of myself to work, but where I was more successful in my career, I feel like that's when I was being more myself and more authentic, and not being scared to do that, was really, really helping my career. And being myself made me different, and it made me stand out. Hence why I managed to build such a huge brand within that organization. So I definitely encourage people to do that. And if you do feel a way about bringing yourself to work, that's a question for the organization, not for you as an individual, which is my personal belief.
Yeah, I share that view. I used to be a solicitor in a former life, and very much put the suit on, went to work, and since I moved to working at university, have felt that I've been able to be myself, and as a result, have done a much better job in honesty. And yeah, I fully endorse that answer. Another question that's come in from Sharon is, again, thanking you for an amazing talk and asking how you deal with any inner voices of doubt that might come in to your head.
Wow. That's a deep question, because that's one thing, even with me, somebody who has so much confidence, has been going through, and do go through a lot. And especially when you're trying to put yourself out there and you're trying to do something where other people can judge you as well, and you're opening the doors for other people to judge you, that's when, self-doubt and stuff like that will kind of creep in. But I feel like that self-doubt got louder, working in the capacity or the format that I was used to working in. And I feel like one thing that I used to do as a young person that helps me to this day is just saying that it's a lie. And this is something that I learned in therapy as a kid. And it wasn't even therapy, it was counseling. One of my counselors used to tell me, so whenever you have this feeling of self-doubt and stuff like that, actually, rather than letting it seep in and like get louder and louder and grow and grow and grow, challenge that thought. Like actually challenge it, because that same energy that thought came into your mind, there's an opposite thought from like an opposite direction that can challenge it back. And I feel like when you train your mind in a sense where it's going back and forth, you start disseminating all the lies. So a lot of these voices of doubt are lies. So a lot of these, like, you're not good enough. So why am I not good enough? I'm still doing X, Y, and Z. And having that conversation with yourself will kind of help you, or has helped me in the past, in terms of getting rid of those feelings of self-doubt. But I feel like if you're a human being and you're breathing on this earth and you're walking around, like, you have every single person is going to have feelings of self-doubt or feeling not good enough. But having that conversation and also reminding yourself of your accolades and what you have achieved definitely helps.
Something I wanted to ask myself, when you've spoken about that sort of early decision that made your change and made you sort of spiral into control, was it a gradual thing, or was there a specific moment or a person or conversation that sparked it, or was it something that just built over a few years?
It's something that built over, I'd say something that built over a few years. I think why I was so lucky was because I was lucky to have people around me that were encouraging, and these are adults in like my school and stuff like that that were encouraging. But I think the thing that flipped it for me was that deep in that I had all this freedom, and that I had all of this, or I had this sense of lack of control, but I had so much control. Like I was actually in control of everything that I was doing. So it's like rather than seeing everything as an obligation, it was like, let me see it as the opportunity. Like, this is my life to live. If I don't want to go to school today, I just want to go to school today. Or if I do want to go to school, like I'll do. So everything was in my control, and seeing life in that way and doing things that I enjoyed. So if I wanted to spend 3 hours playing football, I'll spend 3 hours playing football. If I wanted to spend all day in the like park rapping in ciphers, I'll be doing that. And what these things that I was doing that I enjoyed, and the reason why I enjoyed them was because I was good at them. It was building my confidence, and I didn't realize it was that was getting me out of depression, because a lot of my depression was linked to self-esteem. It was linked to not having control. So as soon as I felt like I can control this, I can control when I wake up in the morning, I can control like whether I eat good, I can control whether I work out, I can control, like, it's my choice at the end of the day. And when I saw the power in that, that's why I feel like over time it just reaffirmed itself. It's like the picture started to get clearer, and then it clicked that this is actually working. Doing things I enjoy and realizing that I have all the control.
And I suppose a follow-up to that question is, what prompted your change from a really successful career within banking, having gone through a similar thing myself where I ditched the law degree and completely changed tack? I'm really interested to know what inspired you. I mean, obviously to do something exceptionally worthwhile, but was that just building on your previous experience and seeing the benefits that you had been able to drive and thinking that you could make that change for others? Or
100%. I feel like that's what kind of, the seed was like kind of planted like in my heart, like when I was speaking at schools, and this was early in my career, but I knew I had to see it out to a certain degree. And I feel like that feeling, just that calling, just became more and more apparent higher and higher up I was getting in the organization. And I just kind of felt like, I kind of felt responsible, if that made sense. I felt like I had this sense of responsibility, like I had to do something, because you guys can see the way I speak, the way I look. It shouldn't make sense that I was a bank manager at the age I was. It shouldn't make sense that I had the education that I had, let alone, you know, not having parents influencing like the most important years of my teenage life, and growing up in various different homes with various different people. And like, it shouldn't happen, but it did happen. And if it could happen for me, it could happen for so many other people. So it was just like everything that I felt like I was taught, or the way I saw the order of the world, was a lie. And I felt like I was responsible to tell these young people the truth, and to tell these organizations the truth, that they need to do better in terms of attracting these young people. And I felt I got to a stage in my career where I wasn't scared to do that. I wasn't scared to challenge my own organization. And when I saw them making changes, it was, okay, maybe other organizations can do this too. And maybe I can have an impact outside of the organization. And I fell in love with doing that and making a difference and connecting with young people and helping young people get employed and seeing organizations thrive off the back of that. It's just been amazing to see. So for me, it was a risk, but I kind of saw it as a calling, if that makes sense. I felt responsible to make a difference in this space. And fair enough, now I'm doing it in a completely different capacity, employed within a school and stuff like that. So now I'm working after leaving my job in 2018. Even I feel like that transition, going back into work and being employed, not contracting, was probably harder than leaving the job in the first place, because that was, again, dealing with the self-doubt of, Jan, how the hell was you a bank manager a couple of years ago, and now look at this salary, like you're working in a school, like what is this? Like, you're going backwards in life. So all of these things I had to challenge, and I had to challenge it with the biggest chest. I had to say, Jam, no, you are doing what you was meant to do and dealing with what you're responsible for, but on a micro level. And that's what I tell myself. I feel like I'm still making a difference, but on a micro level. And I feel like if I continue to build on these imaginal principles, who knows what can be created off the back of this? Because this wasn't planned. Of course, this wasn't planned, going back into work and working in education, but I'm so lucky to be able to do what I'm doing now, and seeing, like, being so grateful in that, still being able to speak and share my story is amazing. But yeah, I feel like, going back the other way was harder for me, harder barrier to overcome.
Jamala, I could, this is such a cliche, but I genuinely have a list of about 55 questions that I wanted to ask you this evening, and I'm very conscious of the time. There's one final question I do want to ask from one of our viewers, and it's Julia, who's asking, how do you see your career progressing? Do you have a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan? What's next?
I feel like COVID has shown us that plans, just forget about plans for right now. And that's okay. I feel like we're so ingrained to having a plan and making little adjustments. We never really see something completely taking that plan out of the window and to start again. But I feel like what COVID has taught me was, and what has helped me do, is discipline on the smaller plans. So now I plan my day and I plan my week, and that's about it in terms of getting me through. In terms of where I see myself, obviously I do have a vision in terms of where I want to be. But what I'm seeing a lot of value in is creating those little daily plans and those weekly plans, and then seeing how that builds up to the greater vision that I have. But in terms of where I'm at now in school, I got inspired when I was working in primary school to rewrite my book. So I wrote a book that was due to be published this year, but obviously plans. But I got inspired to just scrap it and rewrite it. So I was writing it for young adults to start off with, but now it's completely changed into a children's book, and I'm enjoying having fun and being creative with it. And, you know, obviously I've got the best focus group for it because I work in a school with young people. So I'm testing out material, I'm testing out illustrations and branding and stuff like that. So I'm having so much fun with writing this book and seeing how that could potentially help people, because I feel like a lot of the stuff that I read as a teenager helped me get to where I am and helped me develop a mindset. And as a young adult, I'm reading, you know, The Secret and learning about affirmations and and meditation and all of this stuff, but all stuff that I feel like, wow, I was really robbed of education in my primary and secondary years, because had I built these disciplines before, or had I imagined the concept of self-development, like I can actually control this, I can actually change this, I can make something different happen for my life, but much earlier, I feel like the world would just be, again, a much better place. And I feel like that's another calling that I've essentially found, is rewriting this book and having fun with it, and essentially creating a self-development book for kids, which is weird because why would kids want to do that? But essentially just creating that culture around self-development and them having a sense of control. So yeah, that's what I'm planning to do, and that's the plan for the next few years.
Well, I'm sure that everyone watching this is going to wish you a huge amount of success with that. And I promise this will be my final cliche of the night, but thank you so much for being with us this evening. That's been really inspirational. And, you know, I've written down quite a lot of things and quite a lot of thoughts and phrases, which I know that I'm going to be saying all week to my teams and to staff at the university. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, as well. I'm seeing all your messages pop up as well at the bottom. So thank you, everyone.
As I said at the start of tonight's event, this forms part of the university's Black History Month celebrations, and we've got a whole host of other events that you can check out throughout October, and you can do that by visiting our website, where you can see what else is on our schedule. We're going to be sending everyone a quick email just following this event, just to get some feedback, and I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to fill that in. Finally, let me say another big thank you to Jamala, and also to the team working behind the scenes tonight at the university, Rona, Jill, Alex, and Sean. Thank you to you as well for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.